Elizabeth Woolsey moved to Australia and practiced equine veterinary medicine for over 35 years. She authored both nonfiction books and professional papers on such topics as the treatment of burns in horses and surgical procedures. Elizabeth published a book about her experiences as a practicing equine vet in Australia. She recently retired and has returned to the United States, where she is now publishing fictional stories about veterinarians on the Horse Doctor Press. And on today's episode of Author Interview, it's a pleasure to have Elizabeth Woolsey on the show. Welcome on the show, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I feel honored. I've been reading some of your work and I'm a bit in awe.
Oh, that's great. And that's fantastic to finally have you on English literature.
Yeah.
Now, Elizabeth, tell us about your book, The Travels of Dr. Rebecca Harper, A Matter of Time. How does this book come about? I mean, what inspired the book?
Okay. Well, so I was winding down my veterinary work and I had this nasty habit of waking up at 4 a.m. and I couldn't break the habit. So I'm sitting up, I was studying for an exam and then I was writing papers, but all of that was finally over. And I still was awake at 4 a.m. So I thought, well, what can I do for, to entertain myself? And I've always thought about this concept. When I was a little kid in America, I used to watch the television Westerns that they started in the 50s and 60s, and they kind of faded out in the 70s. But there were some really popular ones. There was Gunsmoke and The Rifleman and all these different ones. And there was one called Bonanza. Anyway, long and short is that I thought about what would happen if a veterinarian went back and time traveled back into that time period and inserted himself or herself into there. And of course, they have the knowledge of modern medicine, and yet they're back in the 1800s, because that's a kind of the period that the Western television series kind of depicted in that time. And so that sounds fun, but then the catch is, and it turns out it is Rebecca Harper, who's a veterinarian who would be a similar age to me. She goes back, but she's married and has a daughter. And yeah, it's fun to see all these people once she realizes that she really is back in this. And I used a fictional Western program, but she wants to get home and she doesn't know how to get home. And that's the clicker for the story. That's the catch, is how can she get back to her time and her husband and her daughter? And she ends up, she's kind of with this Western TV family, this fictional family, and they're just like the people that she watched on television. And she realizes just how ridiculous all of that is. And so she is trying to, she can understand being in the 1800s. Well, not really, because time travel is not really much of a concept.
Absolutely.
And especially, until recently, time travel wasn't that very popular of a genre. Now it's extremely popular. But she's trying to, reconcile that she's with these kind of cowboy guys, and they have the values of the 1950s television, where the men are the boss, and people of different races are not treated very well, like the Chinese people in the Bonanza series. There was a lot of questions about how that main character was treated over time. And so she's living that, and she's looking at it from the perspective of a more modern person whose values are quite different from, say, the 1950s and 60s. And so at the same time, her goal is to get back to her family. So she travels all over America to try to find a way. She doesn't know how she actually got there, but she's she was in a rock slide, which happens right early in the book, and that's when she time travels, but she can't figure out from that how to get back. So anyway, the thing is that what I do is I insert not only fictional people
Yeah.
from that time period, but real people too, like Mark Twain. He was a real person, and
Oh,
he
wow.
actually was in Nevada and in the city of Virginia City during that time period of the 1800s. And so she meets him, and she meets um, several very famous doctors, because she realizes that as a woman horse vet, she's never going to make it. So she becomes a doctor, and she goes to medical school. Anyway, and so she meets all these real characters, and she's standing there when Abraham Lincoln does the Gettysburg Address,
Wow.
and she's helps in the Civil War, and then she eventually migrates back to the town that she landed in, which was Virginia City, which is a real town. So that's the kicker of it, and that's
Wow.
what's what if she can ever get back or not. And I'm not going to tell you what happened. So,
Absolutely.
but I will say
Yeah.
that there are 3 more books in the series.
Oh, wow.
So, and the first 2 books are primarily about her and her life.
Okay.
The third book is the daughter that she left. She left a 3-year-old daughter, and that little girl grew up and became a horse vet herself. And then the next book is a kind of a combination of the 2 of them. Kind of, she's Rebecca's one place, and Lauren, her daughter's another place, and just kind of how it mixes up and stuff. So I'm not going to tell you everything, but it's pretty good. I'm
Yeah.
pretty happy about it. So
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah,
Thanks for the one you've shared with us. And of course, I wasn't expecting you to give everything all away in the
no,
interview.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Now, Elizabeth, can you
yes.
tell us about your career as an equine veterinary and how your career influenced your writing? Because from ordinary checking your Amazon author page and the books that you've authored, I kind of see a little bit of similarities. Well, I'm not sure anyway, but I kind of figure out that there's some similarities between your career and what you're writing, and that want to make
Yes,
make me to
yeah,
ask how your career
yeah,
as an equine veterinary influenced your
yeah.
writing in entirely.
Okay. Well, okay. So I was a horse vet for 37 years,
Hmm.
and my dad was a horse vet.
Oh, wow.
And before I went to veterinary school, I actually worked at 3 different really veterinary schools in the United
Amazing.
States for 10 years. So my practice,
Wow.
even though I wasn't a vet for 47, I essentially was literally pretty much all my life. Because when I was
True.
about 15, I think I started working for my dad. And from then on, and I'm a little bit older now, so that's I put a good 50 years into veterinary medicine,
Mm.
and then pretty soon I realized that I was getting older and my reaction time wasn't good, and I decided it was time to get out before I got injured.
Mm.
So the thing is about these characters is there's one that I wrote. There's another book that I wrote called Catch and Release. Now, one of my passions, of course, I love horses, and I love everything about horses. I love their beauty. I love trying to save them. I love the people that own them. It just was a dream come true career for me.
Wow.
But on the side, I like to fly fish, and I like to catch trout. And so I wrote a book about a veterinarian who is a veterinarian in Australia. Now, the other veterinarian, Rebecca Harper, all that series is in America.
Mm.
But Maggie Kincaid, which is in the Catch and Release and Catch and Keep series, that one, she retires, moves back to the United States, and finds a cabin where she can ride horses and fish and kind of see out the rest of her life. And she's kind of left her kids behind in Australia. Well, I wrote all of these books before I retired
Mm.
and before I did anything. But
Wow.
darned if that isn't exactly what I've done. I've moved to this gorgeous place in Georgia, I have a beautiful cabin, a creek. I can fish. If I wasn't talking to you today, Peter, I would be down fishing. And
Oh,
it was
wow.
snowing yesterday, but I'm pretty
Oh,
gung-ho, so I would go down and have a go at it. But maybe when we get done, let's hurry it up. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding. Um, but I love to fish. So then she becomes involved in the community and has some two men that are kind of interested in her.
hmm.
And she goes through all kinds of things. And so there's two books in that series.
Oh,
There's another book that I wrote, which actually came out before all the others, and that was a book called Small Town Secrets, and that is this book right here,
oh,
and that's about a young American doctor. And this woman, my other people are all kind of older, and it's kind of, I mean, I write about what I know, and I know how to be old. So
mm,
I'm immature, but I
absolutely.
am old. So but the Small Town Secrets is about a young veterinarian who is living in a rural Australian town. She's a horse vet, and she gets accused of murdering her babysitter. And so then she has to prove that she's not a murderer. So that one, I weave in all of this, I weave in stories about veterinary medicine, and I try to make
Mm,
it, entertaining and kind of, it fits what's happening always. It's not like I'm just trying to throw something in to throw it in. It has to fit what's going on. So,
absolutely.
um, yeah, so that's that. And then I'm just going to quickly tell you that there's two other books that I've written recently.
Wow.
One is this book came out just a couple months ago. It's kind of hard to see from the color there, but it's called A Man's Worth, and
Yeah.
that's the first book that I've written about a man, and instead of a woman being the primary person. Although there is a woman that kind of tells the story, but it's about a veterinarian who's very old, who's dying,
Oh,
and he wants this woman to write his story, and summons her to come to where he lives in Colorado um, to help him with this story. But in fact, probably what he really wants is that he's on his own, and he wants someone to help him. And
mm,
she had worked for him years ago, and he happened to know that she was, not only could she write, but she was alone as well. And so he invites her, and so it's a story of that. Then the last book, which these two books actually came out in November, is called Parkside Veterinary Clinic. I
wow.
want to be a vet, and this is about kids that want to be
Can see.
vets.
Oh,
And
wow.
so this is more of a YA kind of a book, and it's about 15-year-old four kids that want to work at a veterinary clinic, and there's three positions available, so somebody's going to lose out. But it's stories about the four of them,
Mm,
and that will be a series as well. I've already started to
wow.
write the first few chapters about the next one.
Amazing.
So I don't sit around. I know I'm retired, but 4 a.m. comes and I'm sitting there going, what the heck am I going to do? Okay, well, let's write.
That's amazing,
So,
actually.
yes. So I've
I'm
put out 9 books in about 2.5
wow.
years now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm impressed by your body of works, what you've got out there. They're all fantastic. That's a great one.
Thank you. Thank you.
Y- You're welcome. Now, reading through your book's description page of Catch and Release, Us Doctor Adventures on
Yes.
Amazon, it sounds quite great. And I'm curious if you'll be willing to tell us a bit about that too.
Sure. Okay, so that's Maggie Kincaid, and she's retired, and she moves. She buys a she goes around trying to find a place where she can fish and ride and stuff, and she is retired as well, a lot like me, and so she ends up going to this area, and I never do to say what state or what's going in, but it's a mountainous area, and she buys this cabin, and the way she's able to buy this cabin is that it had sat empty for years because it had there had been a murder suicide in there,
Oh,
and people were not very excited about going there. There was all this speculation as to who, if it really was a murder suicide. I mean, she assumed when she bought the place that it really was a murder suicide and that everything was done. But the couple had a son who didn't believe it, and he was kind of coming around, and so it put people off buying it. So she ended up getting this kind of dream home. And it's next to this national forest, and it's got a creek, and it's a beautiful view. And this mysterious young boy shows up, and he is a deaf mute, and he's been hiding out in this property because it's sat empty for a long time. And he does have a family, and he goes home to his family every night, but he's obviously challenged, and so he brings a piece of paper and he says that he wants to work. And so of course she has a lot to do to fix this place up, so she's would like to know who his parents are, what's going on. And so she has she writes the things to the boy to say, have your parents send me a note to say that it's okay for you to come, and that all gets done. So this young boy starts to work for her, and they get the house all cleaned up, and she plays this music that no normal kid, and this would be pretty modern times, no normal kid would want to listen to, like old people's 50s, 60s, 70s music, the Four Seasons, Walk Like a Man, and kind of music that she would like, but no normal kid would want to do that. And she's thinking, well, this is great, I can listen to my music while we do things. And he doesn't get it. And so eventually she meets some of the people in the kind of the whole area, and one of them is a multi-millionaire guy who flies in and flies out from his cattle ranch, and and his wife had died several years ago, and he's kind of taken with her. And so she's not sure. I mean, he's okay, but he's nothing, she's not super attracted, but he's a kind man, and gosh, he's got a lot of money. I mean, it's not be crazy. And so he kind of starts wooing her. And then the other neighbor that lives is this very reclusive old movie star and television star, but he is hardly ever there. So eventually she meets both of these men, and they are friends. The two men are friends. And so she has this new network of these two men, that one that likes to fish and one that's wants to treat her like a princess, basically. And so she and the movie star's married. So anyway, long and short is that she's just interacting with all of these people, but things start to fall apart, and I'm not going to say why, but the whole thing starts to fall apart. And one of the things that I will say is that the boy is kind of under protective custody, because his mother was shot and killed in a drug deal, and he was there to witness it, and he knew what was going on. And so they keep protecting him, because there's a kind of a group of men, a mob, so to speak, that are interested in keeping this kid silent. So that's that story.
That's great. That's fantastic. Yeah. Now, Elizabeth, as authors, we also have different ways of reacting to feedbacks and, thought reviews that we get from our readers. And I'm curious to know your opinion about criticism. How do you react to negative criticism of your book, if you've ever had one in time past?
I wouldn't know. No, I'm just kidding. No, I definitely. Basically, what I tell people is, and I, do promotions and do different things. And my thing is, I really want to hear the honest truth, because these are the first books I've written. I've got a few more. I think I've got at least 10 more books in me. Ooh, and if I don't know what isn't pleasing people, or what I don't, what I'm getting wrong, how am I going to improve? So I'm kind of, I guess I'm at the age and the stage of my life in which I kind of take it with a grain of salt, but at the same time, I actually value it.
Mm.
And I have a really good friend who reads my books, and I sent him one of the books, and I saw him at a veterinary meeting recently, and he sat down with this book, and he had page after page where I needed to change it, and I'm going, oh no,
Wow.
and I was going,
Wow.
oh, this is terrible. But you know what? They were valuable things. And you know
Absolutely.
what? I
Yeah.
just did it. I just
Mhm.
changed them all. I think every
Absolutely.
single one.
Oh, wow.
So so I'm good with that. Now I
Mm.
have an editor that I use quite a bit from Kentucky, Maryland, and she tries to change a lot of things, and I don't necessarily agree with everything that she does. Now she's getting paid to set me on the path to righteousness, but but most of the stuff, I
Mm.
just find it educates me. I don't like it. I don't like to have to change things. But if I take all of the things that everybody gives me, let's say they give me 100 things, 90% of the time I'll do what they say, and I'll
Mm.
just do it and suck it up and fix it. One of the good things that's happened to me recently is I finally learned how to format. So when I have something wrong, bang, in a day I can fix everything I need to fix, and it can be added back up onto Amazon.
Oh,
I
beautiful.
can yeah, both the ebooks and the paperbacks. Now I can't fix audiobooks, so that has to get done properly.
Absolutely. I
But
agree.
um it's really good, and because it's really quick for me to do it, and I don't have to pay anybody anymore to do those kind of things. So
Mm.
um yeah, so yes, I mean, it's part of what you've got to expect it. Not
Mm.
everybody's going to love you, I think sometimes um I think my brother-in-law doesn't like any of my books.
Oh.
So, and he's still a good guy. As long as he fixes all the things in my house, I don't care if he likes my books or not. So anyway,
That's funny.
yeah,
Well, that's great. I actually feel it. We have we'll have ways of reacting to feedbacks, and sometimes some people's opinion might be very, very good. And you mentioning the sample made me remember when I was working on my most recent collection, Escape from the Unseen Dungeons. I wanted to make it a single book earlier on. So when I sent to some better readers, someone responded and said, Peter, this is a very great book, but I think you should divide it into three sections. Well, I've been wanting to, divide the books into three sections initially,
yeah,
but I don't have the whole what's it called? How would I put it? Consciousness. I think I would love to put it that way. I wasn't so much conscious about it. So when he sent the whole thing to me, he sent the person intentionally sent everything and told me what poems would be in part one, and
yeah,
what poems would be in part two, and what poems would be in part three, and even suggested titles. I was like, oh my God, this is
yeah,
amazing. This is
yeah,
very amazing. And
yeah,
hilariously, I went with all the person said. And that was like Cry for Mercy came to be, all the demons came to be, and I saw the
yes,
light. And I was like,
yeah,
I've been wanting to do this for a very long time, but it
yeah.
came through you, and I'm very grateful. Thank you for reminding me to do that. So that shows
Yeah.
how valuable feedbacks
Yeah,
can
well,
be.
exactly. Yeah. And despite your best efforts, you're going to find things like once it's in print, you'll find something that's wrong and you go, "Oh my
Hmm.
God." Because before I always had to get somebody else to fix it. I write and say, "Look, we didn't put a period at the end of a sentence,
Hmm.
that kind
Yeah.
of thing." And to have somebody go back and then get files, wait for them for a week to do it, get it back into Amazon, pray that it uploads, okay, that kind of stuff. Well, all of
Yeah.
that I can do that part now, but there are major things that sometimes need to get changed, and
Hmm.
so you just got to do it. If you're going to do a lot of writing, I think you've got to accept the fact that you're going to make mistakes, and that
Absolutely.
you've got to, and some of them could be quite monumental.
Yeah.
Like I left Catch and Release with a major cliffhanger. And
Oh,
boy, I have been
wow.
raked over the coals about that. Now I can't fix that. You just have to live with the fact that it's a cliffhanger. But what I did
Wow.
do for all of my books
Mm,
is I put the next chapter, the if it's a series,
series.
I
Mm,
put the first chapter of the next book. So
mm,
then it's not so much of a cliffhanger. And then they
absolutely.
can decide whether they want to go on or not. Now,
Yeah.
also got somebody that's helping me with promotions who says, now we're taking those out. And I'm going, I don't know. But anyway, I'm learning,
Mm,
it's not easy. It's like writing
absolutely.
is the fun part. It's the all the other stuff that is so demanding and so
Mm,
difficult and so foreign for me. And I find I'm spending, half of my time now learning to do things to promote and things like that. Now, the only thing that I comes naturally to me is podcasts. In case
oh,
you can't
wow.
tell, I like doing them. It's easy.
Oh,
I
wow.
I can just sit down and do that, and I love doing it. And I'm
Yeah.
happy to do a podcast for anybody. But all the other things, whoa, it's hard.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's quite fantastic to know. Now,
Yeah.
Elizabeth, can you tell us about Jack's War, Letters
Oh yeah.
from an
Okay.
American
So
World War II?
oh yeah, this is really good. Now this is different. Jack's War
Mm.
is a book about my father. And
Oh,
when my father was 19 or 20, World War II broke out. And like all young men at that time, it just was automatic that you were gonna enlist. And
absolutely.
so he was at university and he enlisted in the Army Air Corps. It was the Army Air Corps, and he wanted to be a pilot, but he went to Texas originally, and with his aptitudes and all that kind of stuff, they changed him to be a navigator, which he was quite happy with. He wrote letters home every week to his parents,
Mm.
and my grandparents they were a little bit different. Anyway, they kept in a good way too. They kept every single letter that he wrote,
Oh,
and they
wow.
had it in the envelope, and they had it in an album. And I have all of that. So
Wow.
when I never knew about it, I never knew anything about that.
Wow.
Like most men that were in World War II or that have been in terrible conflicts, they go through what they go through, they come back, and of course in those days they didn't know what PTSD was, and so they weren't, if they had traumas or had problems, it was just theirs to own. But my father never talked about war. He never talked about anything. As kids, we used to play war. I don't, he, well, my dad was out working all the time, so he probably wouldn't even know we did it. But we played war a lot. But we didn't have any firsthand knowledge because our parents didn't tell us anything. We just saw what was on television or movies or things.
Mm. Oh,
So,
wow.
so all these letters were sitting there for, I don't know, 50 years.
Wow.
And when just before he passed, my stepson Duncan, was in the Australian Air Force, and he was a fighter pilot. And so my dad felt that he should talk to him about the potential to going to war and the potential of the things that he had to face. Like, I tried to talk to him once. I knew all this had come out, and he says, "I don't want to talk about it." He said, "I killed people. I don't want to think about it." And so, because he went on bombing missions over
Mm. Oh,
Germany
wow.
from the UK, and
Wow.
so anyway, he got all that stuff out, and he had kept all of his mission maps. He had to write reports for every mission that he went on, and in those times you did 35 missions.
Mm.
And if you survived the 35 missions, you became a member of what they called the Lucky Bastard Club.
Wow.
And so all these people around the world have mementos from their fathers that or grandfathers that were in the war and that survived those missions. and my dad said in one of his letters, so I'm a member of the Lucky Bastard Club, but I never found the memento, the
Oh,
paper that said it. So, but I've got all the letters, I've got the mission maps and everything. So I put it all together in this book. And so it just starts right at the beginning from the day he leaves Woodland, California, and he's on a train. He goes to Denver. He talks about a really good steak meal he has. Then he
oh,
gets down
wow.
to Texas, and all the things that happened to him have been chronicled in other books. And one of them is a book called The Wild Blue. And he did tell me, he said, you ought to read, if you really want to know what it was like for me, read The Wild Blue. And I think that was about George McGovern, who was one of the famous senators, and I think he ran for president once. Anyway, he didn't get it,
Wow.
but it was like hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait. So, he waited. He would finish his classes, like he would be, learning how to navigate, and he would finish that course, and then he couldn't leave because they took people alphabetically on a train, and they could only take, say, 100. Well,
Mm.
his last name was Woolsey, so he would always get left. And so
Wow.
the frustration of those kind of things that happened to him, that's
Mhm.
all in this book. And then he talks about his time over in Europe when he's doing these missions, and this bravado that comes out about, we're so disappointed when we don't get to go out and do our mission, because boy, we really want to go out there and, take one for the team and all that kind of stuff. Well, really, it's bravado. They're scared to death. So you can read that in between the lines, but basically there's, I think, 140 letters that he wrote to
Wow.
his parents, and they're not long, and you read one, and then you just want to read the next, and then you
No.
just want to read the next. So when I was putting this together,
Mm.
my daughter Shelley was a history major at Adelaide University in Australia, and her major professor was specialized in World War II and
Oh,
that kind of stuff. And he read it, and he said, "This is so significant. I'm so glad you put this together." And he wrote a little forward in it for me.
wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good. And even a person that has no interest in airplanes or war or anything like that, you'll just find it interesting because it's short, sharp little letters.
Absolutely. When I read the discussion part of the book on Amazon, I was quite intrigued by it. When I
Yeah.
ordinarily read the description, I was like, I even wanted to ask you, how did he manage to discover the letter? Did he find later read the letter before he died? And quite a lot of things coming through my mind. And I was like, this must have been a very, very interesting book, even for him to put those letters together. And I also thought within myself that did he even have an idea that the letters were going to be public someday? Probably he wouldn't have an idea like that. Probably he was just putting it together, something like that. And it's just quite amazing to me. And it sounds like a book that I would really
Yeah.
love to read.
Yeah. Well, I think my father became quite pretty famous veterinarian in his area and stuff. And I think, and he had race horses, and his race horses did very well. And so if he summed up his life,
Mm.
the war was only a few years of it. Keep in mind, he turned 21 when he was still in navigation school. And so he was still in Texas. So he's a young man, and he goes over and he's there for, I don't know, I think he's there for a year or two doing his missions.
Oh,
And he comes back. He's going to switch and become a pilot. So he's back. I think he's headed back to Texas to go to pilot school, or maybe it was even Alabama. But anyway, long short is that the war ended, and so he
mm.
didn't become a pilot. Now he did actually buy a plane, and he and some friends flew it and stuff, but he never officially became a pilot.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, so if you asked him about his life, that wouldn't have been that, it was something he just put away. He just didn't want to deal with it. I think he would be pleased that the book came out and that people could see this. I think he'd be
I think
very
so.
pleased,
Yeah,
but as long as he's not around to know about it. Yeah,
I think so. I
yeah,
think so. That's
yeah,
actually a very great work. And I say Thank you for putting it out. Now, I'm also curious to know if you've experienced any challenges while writing your book. If there is any, could you share with us what challenge it is and how you
Yes.
ultimately overcame it?
Yeah. Well, okay. First of all, I have dyslexia. So when I write, thank goodness, well, I use Microsoft Word now, and
Mm,
I use Grammarly for editing, and I also but I cannot edit what I write, and most authors can't. They'd really need an external person to do editing. Now,
yeah.
you might be the exception, but and I haven't found, I've been, I've read about 50 pages of your book, and
Oh.
I have not found a typo yet,
Oh.
and nor have I found anything that I would say is like, oh, he should have said it this way. But
Oh.
but keep in mind, I have dyslexia, so you can put a bomb in the middle and I might not notice it.
Thank
But
you so much. That's a compliment.
yeah, yeah, well, it's meant to be too, because I am fairly impressed. So
Oh.
anyway, uh, yeah, so I have a hard time editing, and I um I use a lot of things like the Grammarly and all those kind of things for editing. Then I go back and I do read aloud, and that's when I really pick it up, because
Mm,
I don't have this eye to brain thing going on very well. I'm a smart person and all that, but I struggled, and I really struggled when I was young. Things got much better. I think when I hit puberty, I kind of rewired my brain a bit, but I really struggled as a young girl in education, getting learning things. So thank you, Lord, for read aloud, for reading back or read aloud. And they've got Microsoft Word has some immersive immersive voices, and
mm,
I use Microsoft Emma, and it's like I almost could use her for the narration. It is so good, and it's got the tone that I want. And I hear I hear what I think I've written, and if but I do find mistakes, and
oh,
so I will write 3 or 4 chapters, and then I'll just go back just to refresh myself, and I will listen to it, and that's when I get a lot of editing done. And then after that, then it goes to the editors. Now it goes to my friend Marilyn, I mentioned. Then it goes to another lady that does a proof for me, because
oh,
I'm just don't trust myself. So that's kind of part of it. That's a challenge. I'm not very good at picking covers for books. We completely changed the cover
oh.
for my time travel books. Thank goodness, because once I saw a better cover, I was really happy. Although a lot of the um, impetus for me to write that particular book was a picture of a woman fishing back in the 1940s, although you wouldn't know what year it was. It could be the 1800s. And she's got a horse. She's standing on a rock in a river. I think it's in Montana. It's a picture by a man named Charles Belden. And
Mm,
we think it's his wife fishing. And that's really what just made me think and think and think about this concept about a woman back in the 1800s. Anyway, so um, so I'm not good at picking covers. Then I'm not very good at marketing. In
oh.
fact, I'm pretty bad at that, but I'm learning. I'm getting better, and I'm learning. And so those are all things that I just have to do it.
Mm,
I'm not giving these books away to a publisher. So, and I guess the other thing, the true thing is that this is really my passion. I think about
mm.
it all day, all night. When I'm fishing, I'm writing in my head.
Oh, wow.
When I'm, driving in a car, I'm either I do audiobooks like crazy,
Mm.
because I'm very slow reader. Getting through 50 pages of your book last night was like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that much. But it just, it's like my dad's letters, moreish. You just want to read a bit more. Oh, just read another page, that kind of thing. So, so
Mm,
you know, I struggle with all those kind of things. But as far as the concepts and the ideas and things like that, I got that. It's good. You think of crazy things, I can do it.
That's great. That's quite fascinating to know. Thanks for adding that. And I'm
Yeah.
a bit curious if you would be willing to tell us briefly about your other bodies of works. That'll be fine if you have one you would love to specifically tell us about. Because I realize you have quite a
Well,
few
okay.
books
So
out there.
the Small Town Secrets is again is about a young American vet. She's married to an Australian doctor. They're living in a rural town, and I tended to pick areas. I've always kind of followed that advice about write what you know about. I'm just not going to do
Very
science
true.
fiction. I
Yeah.
know that I've picked genres that are not that popular. Aside from All Creatures Great and Small, which was a very big, just a huge, huge hit back, I don't know, in the 60s maybe, about a veterinarian in Yorkshire in the UK. Veterinarians, they're not really selling that much, but I try to add things to it to make them more interesting to outside people. And I have lots and lots and lots of people that have read my books, and especially the time travel ones
Hmm.
that are not horse people, and they're not
Vet.
but they maybe like the old west, and they like the concept of going back and being in a television series. It's like when I talk to people, I say to them, and of course you don't watch TV, Peter, so you're not going to help me with this one, but uh, so but most of us that grew up watching a lot of TV, and I don't much anymore myself, but I certainly did. And usually most kids, especially American kids or Australian kids,
Hmm.
which are the ones that I know about, they had a favorite program that they just loved, that they just couldn't wait to watch, once a week or whatever. And so you say to them, now these people are adults. Well, what if you could go back and be in the Andy Griffith Show, or you could be Lost in Space, or some program, Flipper, which was one about a dolphin.
Hmm.
Anyway, all these programs that these kids, what if you could be in that? Wouldn't that be cool? And people just they remember their youth, and they go, oh yeah, oh, I'd love to do that. And then I'd say, but what if you couldn't get back? What if you were stuck in that? And
Oh,
then that there's the hook. So people that have not, don't have the same interests as me, still enjoy the book. And um because I put a lot of things into it, but I try to keep, humor is really big for me, and so
wow.
um I think it's important to keep that in there. So
Absolutely.
with the book about small town secrets, there's kind of usually some little theme that runs through everything. And in this case, this woman is absolutely obsessed with this bakery that makes carrot cake. And so like, she's going to go to jail, and she's going, but I need carrot cake. How are we going to do that? And the lady said, well, the lady that makes the carrot cake says, well, if you did the crime, you're not getting any of my carrot cake. I don't care. And so anyway, I try to add, humor, and I try to have kind of upbeat
Important.
kind of people.
Yeah.
So that, that's important. Worth That's actually my favorite book ever. Um, so that's this one right here. So
Means what?
I absolutely I fell in love with that man, and
Oh.
I mean, when I finished that book, I was grieving. I mean, I was absolutely grieving, and I just told everybody, I said, I'm sorry, I'm grieving right now. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to do anything. I
Oh,
was
wow.
seeing a really nice guy, poor guy. I said, I'm sorry, it's over. I mean, I'm grieving.
Oh,
Anyway,
wow.
so I fall in love with my characters and people, and I live alone here, and my, you know, my friends say, don't you get lonely? Nah, if I'm lonely, I'll just write about somebody that I want to be with. So
Oh, wow.
I don't, yeah, so I don't, I write about people that I like. The main characters are people that I like, and if I don't like them, I'll make them so interesting that I'm still interested in them. In other
Mm,
words, I'll give them some quirky personality or something.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Anyway, so that's that one, and I've got some that I'm writing right now. I'm writing a third book in the Catch and Release series. I'm writing a book. When I retired, I lived kind of in a very rural, kind of a semi-rural area of Australia. And I knew I couldn't leave because COVID was still on.
Mm,
So I rented a house out on a beach in South Australia in this beautiful little town, um, on kind of the York Peninsula. And so there's something about that place and that time that I spent. I was there for about 3 months, waiting to get a visa to
oh,
come over to America. And I wrote 2 books while I was there, and just walked on the beach every day and read a lot of books. I read a lot, and just things that I had not had time to do for so long. Anyway, the I decided to write a story about that area. So I've got it does involve veterinarians, and it involves a human doctor,
mm,
and just some of the kind of community people. Not nobody that I know. There's nobody that exists that's in there, but that's a good story, and I quite enjoy that one. I'm working on that one, and then and the yeah. Anyway, so
that's great.
yeah, I have more to write than I possibly have
Mm,
time for in my life.
oh, wow. Wow, that's great. You've actually
Yeah,
got quite a lot out there, which are quite
yeah.
impressive. Now, I want to ask you, could you tell us what publishing is like for a published author like yourself? What are the challenges that you've encountered in terms of marketing your book? And what are the...
It is money and fame. So
Mm, mm,
so I'm not making money yet, but I'm hopeful. If I can meet my book costs, that would be nice. Um, and getting my name out there, getting people to know me. I've just really stepped it up in the last few months, and so that's helping. And that's one of the reasons why when you asked me if I wanted to come on, I went, why not? Sounds good. I didn't know how it was going to work or where it was going to take me, but I thought pretty good. I was happy. So and then I did a lot of research about you. Then I was really happy to do it. So I think you come from such a different area. What I tell people is I do not know my readers. I do not know who they are because
mm,
I've already run through my family and friends and my veterinary colleagues and all that. So, but I got to sell more books than that. So I've got to reach out to people that I don't know in
absolutely.
walks of life that I don't know. And that's
Mm,
kind of what I'm doing now. But I think putting the whole thing together, and then the biggest challenge I think is that my books are not the popular genres. Yes, time travel is somewhat of a popular drama
sure.
genre, but
Science fiction.
but veterinary medicine, and a lot of my characters are older, so while most women readers are older, you have to find them and get them kind of interested in that, because even older women still want to read about hot men's, and young women and things like that,
Mm,
dungeons and fantasies and different things. And I
science
guess the
fiction.
other thing is at this stage I'm not writing about anything hot. I'm not writing about anything. There's no. I keep it kind of clean, and and I'm a normal person. Trust me, I have thoughts that are less than clean, but
Well,
they're not going to come out in these books, at least at this stage.
Mm.
So um, I might get desperate, but I don't think so. Anyway, people, I'm not leaving out the fact that people, might sleep with one another or things like that, but I'm not going to describe it in intimate detail.
Oh, wow.
Um, so, uh, so because of that, I may never be, I may never be popular, but I don't care. I'm having so much fun.
Your book. And I love the fact that you mentioned that there are some books that are extremely erotic and
Yes. Yeah.
romantic and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There are some writers I've read that will describe every scene, how it happened,
Yeah.
how the
Yeah.
character removed his or her
Yeah.
clothes, till
Yeah.
how everything. I'll be like, oh my God, did you guys
Yeah.
have some bit of morals?
Yeah.
It's quite hilarious sometimes.
Well, yeah. So I've got a lot of people that help me with my books, that read my books for, along with me. And some of them are um, people that I just not gonna, I'm not gonna write that kind of stuff. And I've
I'm
got two
sure.
sisters who wouldn't let me. I mean, they barely let me put in a swear word occasionally. So
Wow.
um, anyway, that's so I may never have the popular genre, but when people get, like, somebody wrote today, a friend wrote to me, a retired veterinarian wrote to me, and he had just listened to the first book, The Travels of Rebecca Harper, is on Audible. It came out, and it's in many different places now. It's on, and Spotify has given me a whole bunch of um, promo codes, so um, I can give these codes out, and people can listen to the book for free, and that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
So, and of course, if I don't make money, well, I don't care, because I need to get my name out. So making money is not the name of the game right now. It's getting myself to be
No.
more notable. Like, if I could walk, if I walked into the grocery store, um, if I walked into the grocery store in Australia, there's no chance that I would not be recognized, because
Oh.
everybody knew who I was when I was there. I
Mm.
was a I was a small fish in an incredibly small pond.
Oh,
But
wow.
but over here, people don't know me at all. And so every time I go through, I kind of laugh to myself going, nope, nobody knows I'm a writer. So anyway, so I got a good sense of humor about it. It's not like, it'd be nice to be famous, but I'm as long as the fish bite, I don't care as much. So
It's true.
anyway,
That's
yeah,
great. I love your philosophy in that.
yeah.
And I actually want to ask you, is there anything that you love to share with the viewers about your books that we couldn't mention in this interview and you'd love the viewers to know?
Well, okay, so there are lots of things, like I well, one thing that's really fun is that occasionally I'll use the name of one of my friends.
Oh, wow.
And on my final book, um, I was talking to one of my veterinary friends, and her name is Pamela Wilkins, and she's a professor at a University of Illinois in veterinary medicine, and she's world famous. She was, I think, deemed the best equine vet of, I forget when it was, 2000 and something. Really, really famous, very intelligent, very wonderful, wonderful woman with a second sense of humor. And we were going to meet when she was coming out to Australia, but I couldn't do it. And I called her up and said, I'm really sorry, I just can't do it, because I was in one state and she was going to be in another, and I just couldn't get away. And so she, I said, what can I do to make it up? And I said, would you like to would I could use your name as a character in a book? And she goes, yeah. She says, actually, that's pretty good. That could maybe make up for it. And
Oh,
so,
wow.
so Pamela Wilkins is one of the characters in the last book of the time travel book of
Oh,
the
wow.
travels of Rebecca Harper. And I said, so what do you want to be? And so there was this long pause, and I can remember this conversation. I've got my phone, and it's in the evening, and I'm walking my dogs on this road. I remember exactly when it happened. She goes, I want to be a hussy with a heart of gold. And so basically she's she's basically kind of a woman who, of disreputable means, but she's also a that kind of saved the town a couple times, because she amassed a fortune owning a bar and a brothel, I think. And it turned out that in the 1800s, there was Juliette Brulette was this woman. And so I changed I didn't use Juliette Brulette. I used Pamela Wilkins' name. And basically, so she's a character in the book. And then I wrote to her a few months later and I said, well, you're in. And she goes, well, good. And I said, here's the problem. I got to kill you off. You were just too nice. And it was, and Rebecca Harper's suitors were getting more interested in you than her. So I had to get rid of you. So basically, and it was a love rival. I had to kill off the love rival. So that was a lot of fun. And so since then I've talked to other people, and I've written my friend John Mitchell into a book, and I've got Lisa Willis is coming up into another book, and these are all veterinary friends of mine. So anyway, it's fun, and I just have such a good time writing these things, even if it's sad.
Oh, wow. That's actually a very great and fun thing to do. It's quite impressive. I think this is my first time hearing this. That's quite great.
Yeah. Well, obviously you have to get permission from people to use their name.
Sure.
But my dog's, she's been long dead, so I didn't have to get her permission for a name of a dog in one of the time travel books that plays a large role in the book. And a lot of these stories are stories from my veterinary career, like one of the stories that's coming up in a book is a story about a little boy that had a horse that had colic, and colic is just abdominal pain, and it can be from anything. Anyway, long and short is that I was just about ready to retire, and this pony shows up with the owner and the mother, and it's really bad, and it doesn't look like we're going to be able to save this thing. And I'm thinking, I do not want to retire on a bad note. And so I ended up killing myself to save this pony. I mean, just about killed myself. And I did save it. And so, and I actually kept the pony. I'd even retired, and the pony was still with me because it still wasn't right. Kept the pony for another month after I had retired. We didn't tell anybody that the pony was there, but it was there at the clinic. And basically it's a little boy, and he was about 6 years old. His name is Jensen Centenera. He just loved this pony and the family. I mean, this pony was a little rat bag, and he was outgrowing the pony, and the pony just was horrible to be around for anybody but Jensen. And so the pony didn't have a lot of value, and it wasn't worth, gigantically expensive life-saving surgery and things like that. And those are things you have to live with as a veterinarian. You have to put sometimes, and it was also very old, really old. And so for all those things, the parents, declined to go much further. So I made a deal with Jensen, and keep in mind, he's 6 years old. And I said, here's the deal. You really love this pony, and I can see you're really interested in what we're doing and everything. I said, what do you want to do when you grow up? And he says, I want to be a veterinarian. And I went, perfect. I said, if I save that pony, I don't care if you become a veterinarian or not, but you better work hard and get good grades so you can do whatever it is you want to do. So far, it's been 2 years. He's doing it.
Wow, that's great.
And I hear from him all the time, and from his mother, and whether he becomes a veterinarian or not, I don't know. But that story is in one of the books that's coming up.
Beautiful. Wow, that sounds very beautiful and amazing.
Well, it's real true. So, and there's lots of those kind of stories, and those kind of characters that are real people that I knew. I use there's two men that I knew from my practice in Australia, Ron Hughes and George Birchmore. They're both
Mhm.
passed. They were just great clients and friends of mine, and I use their names all the time in books.
Wow.
Change them around just a little bit. They play different roles, but important people to me. In fact, I'm looking across the room, and there's Ron and George's pictures sitting up on my wall. So
Oh, wow.
um, there's a lot of my life in these books.
That's
I guess
great.
that's probably the what we can leave on, huh?
Hmm. That's amazing to know. That's pretty much
Yep.
amazing to know. Now, I also want to ask you, as a published author, what sort of advice do you have for other writers who are still struggling to publish in a book like yours? What did you tell people in this category?
Well, okay. So first of all, I think they need to know what they're up to because it's not just writing the book.
Mm,
First of all, is I don't care if you have to sell your firstborn, get it edited professionally. Okay, always get your book edited professionally, and don't expect your don't expect your best friend to do it, or your mother, or your daughter that's in university. You got to get somebody external to do that. I think
mm,
that's really important.
yeah.
Make sure that you have a genre. If you want to make money, you've got to
Mm,
have a genre, and you probably ought to figure that the best way and the easiest way to do these things, unless you're just an incredibly good writer, you know, you're going to have a series, like Harry Potter or Diana Gabaldon, who writes the Outlander series. Those are books that make money. Whereas if you
mm,
write a single book on its own, and trust me, I've got them here, uh, they don't, they just, people want something to keep going and to keep going. So consider
absolutely.
something that will make a series.
Mm,
Um, I think invest a lot into your cover and into your getting someone to help you with your back cover and
mm,
with your promotional things like what you put on Amazon, those kind of things.
yeah.
I think that really helps. And then I just would, if you're really serious, stick with these genres that are popular. So I'm not doing it myself, but I recommend if 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 making money is your passion, well, I think you better do that. If you're writing a memoir about yourself or something like
Mm,
that, that's different. And I don't have a lot to say other than I wouldn't expect to make a ton of money unless you're
mm,
a famous person of some sort. You're
mm,
Michelle Obama, or you're
absolutely. Joy
those
building.
kind of people they're gonna maybe write something that's absolute pure trash. That is
Mm,
not what I'm saying about Michelle Obama. I'm just saying you can write stuff that's pure trash,
mm,
and you're going to get by with it because the person's famous.
absolutely.
So
That's great.
yeah.
It's quite fantastic. And I'm hopeful that viewers, including myself, would love to utilize your advice. Now, I want to ask you, where can viewers get a copy of your book for anyone who would love to get
Well,
copies?
okay. So all of my books are on Amazon right now.
Okay.
Um, and I've got a few. I'm starting to migrate over to uh, Ingram Spark, so
Oh.
they can go wider.
Mm.
But right now, like all of my books are ebooks on Amazon for $2.99. Now, come on, get real. That's not very much money.
That's
And you can read them for free on Kindle Unlimited.
limited.
So, and that's the biggest market, but that's not to say that's the only market. So recently when I did the audiobook, I started with Audible, but we went wide to something called Findaway Voices that put the book on many as an audible book, as an audiobook
Oh,
on
wow.
many different platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, all these all
Audible,
these different ones. I mean,
audio.
I forget how many there are.
A lot.
So yeah, Spotify sent me 100 free um, promo codes. Now I've used up
Oh,
quite a few of them, but I still have some left. So if people are interested in getting one and reading the first time travel book or listening to it for free, and audiobooks are really, they're the rage. And I think you got to think long and hard about taking all your books to, I don't know that poetry would work, but taking your books to starting with audio. I was very lucky. I had somebody approach me, a guy named Brett Wilson, has Skydance Mountain Audios, and I think that's how you say it. But anyway, he arranged and did everything for me. I just had to give him the book, and I happened to find the narrator, but he also was looking too. And anyway, long short is that if you're interested in getting a promo code, you can Elizabeth Woolsey on Facebook, and you got to private message me, and if I have some left, I'll do it. The other way that would be really good is to go to my webpage, which is elizabethwoolsey.com, and sign up for my newsletter, and then just send me a quick note to say that you're there, and then I can pop a promo code if I have enough left, so you can listen to this book. So the reports are coming really good, so I'm really happy on the book. It was a little bit of a challenge to get it read the way I thought it should be read. But Susie Lerner is the narrator, and she really caught the essence of me, because I think you can see I'm not a sweet young thing. I'm not, I'm a tough woman. And so she had to get her, toughened up a bit, but she did a great job. So I'm very, very pleased.
That's great. And for viewers who would love to get a copy of Elizabeth Woolsey's book and the promo code, I left a link to the website in the description part of this interview, and also a link to our Amazon author page in the description part of this interview. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. It's a pleasure having you on the show.
It's been my pleasure too, and my honor. I'm so impressed with you. Good luck with all your work. I just feel like I found somebody that's on their way up, a rising star. I may not be around by the time you are the famous poet laureate of wherever.
You'll be around.
Well, I'm in my 70s, so we'll see. Anyway, I've got the immaturity gene, so I should be around for a while.
Yeah, you'll be around.
So anyway, so good luck with all your stuff too.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.